The apartment was full of the specific noise of a family that had forgotten to be careful about happiness. Ara was on the living room floor attempting to feed her stuffed rabbit a piece of mango that the rabbit had no interest in accepting, narrating the situation in the private language she used when she felt strongly about something. Dae-sung was in the kitchen, laughing at something Adaze had just said. A real laugh, the kind that arrived without permission, the kind that used his whole face. Adaze was leaning against the kitchen counter in a silk blouse and bare feet, one hand wrapped around a mug, watching him laugh with the expression she only wore inside this apartment, inside this life, open, unguarded, entirely hers. "She's been trying to feed that rabbit for 20 minutes, Adaze said. "The rabbit has principles," Dae-sung said. "The rabbit is going to win." Ara looked up at both of them, assessed the room, determined that nobody was paying sufficient attention to the crisis at hand, and announced her dissatisfaction in 3 sharp syllables. "We hear you," Dae-sung called. Ara returned to the rabbit. This was the life. Tuesday evening, mango, a rabbit with principles, and the particular warmth of a home that had been built by people who understood the cost of the alternative. Adaise looked at Dae-sung across the kitchen and felt the thing she still wasn't entirely accustomed to feeling. Not the composed satisfaction of a woman who had made a good decision, but something warmer and less manageable than that. Something that arrived in the ordinary moments more than the significant ones. Something that had no boardroom equivalent. The doorbell rang, not a knock. The bell, sharp, single, immediate. Dae-sung looked toward the door. Adaise straightened slightly. Ara ignored it completely, too committed to the mango situation to be distracted by adult business. "Expecting someone?" Adaise said. No. He was already moving toward the door, wiping his hands on a cloth from the counter. Adaise crossed the kitchen doorway into the living room and bent to move the mango slice out of Ara's determined grip before it ended up somewhere permanent. She heard the front door open. She heard Dae-sung's voice. "Hello?" And then nothing, no responding voice, no exchange. She looked up. Beneath the front door, sliding across the hardwood floor in the specific way of something deliberately pushed through the gap, came an envelope. Cream, slim, no return address. Adaise was closer to it than Dae-sung was. She straightened, crossed the room, and picked it up before he had turned from the open doorway where he stood looking into an empty hallway. She turned the envelope over. 3 words, handwritten on the front in clean, deliberate script. "For Dae-sung only." She looked at the words. She looked at the hallway beyond the open door where Dae-sung stood still, looking left and right at nothing. Whoever had rung the bell was already gone. No footsteps, no elevator sound, just the empty quiet of a corridor that had held someone 30 seconds ago and now held no one. He turned back. His eyes found the envelope in her hand. He went very still. Not guilty still. Not the stillness of a man who knows what this is and is managing the moment of being caught. Something different. Something she would spend the next 72 hours trying to precisely name. The stillness of a man who doesn't know what this is, but whose body has already registered that it is something. She held it out to him. It came under the door. He crossed the room and took it from her. He looked at the front. His jaw moved once. "Do you know what it is?" she said. No. She watched his face. His face was telling the truth. He did not know what it was, but he looked at it the way people looked at things they were afraid to open. Not because they knew what was inside, but because some part of them had already understood that the inside was going to be a before and after line. That whatever was in this envelope was going to divide the timeline of their life into the part that came before it arrived and everything that came after. "Open it," she said. He looked at her once. Then he opened it. If this story already has your stomach turning and we are barely 3 minutes in, that is exactly where you are supposed to be. Subscribe right now and drop a comment. Do you think Adaise should have picked that envelope up or left it on the floor where it landed? Tell me, because that one decision is going to matter more than anyone in this apartment currently understands. He read it standing in the middle of his own living room with Ara on the floor between them, still negotiating with the rabbit, and Adaise watching his face with the full precision of a woman who reads human expression for a living. She watched him read it once. She watched him read it twice. She watched the thing move through his face that she had only seen once before, on the night she sat across from him in low light and told him that his ex-wife had left him for her fiancé. That specific, controlled catastrophe, that particular quality of stillness that was not calm, but was the thing a person built around themselves when calm was no longer available. Dae-sung. He folded the letter back into the envelope. He looked up. "What is it?" she said. He looked at her for a long moment, and then he said the thing that would hollow out the next 72 hours of her life. "It's nothing urgent," he said. "Medical correspondence. I'll deal with it." He was lying. She knew he was lying with the same certainty she knew everything she had ever verified before acting on. Not because his face gave too much away, but because it gave nothing away. And Park Dae-sung was a man who only locked his face completely when the thing behind it was too large to risk partial visibility. She said nothing. She let him carry it to the bedroom, and she returned to the kitchen, and she finished her tea, and she watched Ara finally accept defeat on the rabbit situation and move on to disassembling a board book instead. And she was quiet for the rest of the evening in the way of a woman who is waiting, who is very good at waiting, and who understands that pushing a locked door before you are ready to handle what is behind it is never the right strategy. He didn't sleep. She felt it beside her in the dark. Not movement, not sound, just the specific quality of wakefulness that a body emits when the mind will not release it. She lay still. She did not reach for him. She gave him the dark and the privacy of it, and she stared at the ceiling and she thought about the 3 words on the front of that envelope. For Dae-sung only, whoever pushed that envelope under her door had known she would be here, had known that the default recipient of anything that arrived at this apartment was now both of them, had written those 3 words specifically to create a separation that this household no longer naturally contained. Someone had sent that envelope to divide them. The question was from which direction the division was intended. By morning, he was dressed before she was, which he was never. He had made tea, but his was barely touched, which it never was. He kissed her at the kitchen counter with the specific warmth of a man, trying very hard to be present. In a moment he was only partially inside, and she kissed him back and said nothing, and watched him move through the morning with the careful deliberateness of a person maintaining a performance under enormous internal pressure. He left for the office at his normal time. She gave him 40 minutes. Then she called Sandra. "I need to know if a medical envelope can be traced," she said. "Handwritten address, no return, slid under a residential door." "Depends entirely on the content and whether there is a clinic or registry attached," Sandra said. "If it's connected to any medical institution, there will be a paper trail. Give me what you have." "I don't have the letter," Adais said. "I only saw the outside." "Then I need a direction to search in." Adais was quiet for a moment. "Search anything connected to Park Dae-sung's medical history that involves fertility," she said. "Anything involving a clinic or a procedure, or an arrangement made in the last 4 years. Sandra paused. "That's a sensitive area." "I know what area it is," Adaisi said. "I need to understand what I'm walking into before I walk into it." 24 hours, Sandra said. She went to work. She ran 3 meetings and a strategy review, and a one-on-one with her legal team about a pending contract, and she did all of it with the surface performance of a woman whose life is fully intact and whose attention is completely here. Underneath the performance, she was doing the other thing, the thing she always did when a situation was developing, faster than her information could match. She was staying very still and very watchful and collecting every available data point while revealing nothing. Dae-sung was quiet at the office. Competent, present, professional, but the specific warmth that had become his baseline in the last 18 months, the ease that lived in him now the way tension used to, was absent. He was performing normal. She recognized the performance because she was running one simultaneously, and she knew every note of it from the inside. They drove home together. Ara launched at both of them from the childcare provider's arms with the total physical commitment she brought to every reunion, as though each time they returned was a minor miracle she intended to fully celebrate. Dae-sung held her, and the expression on his face when he held her was the only moment all day that his performance cracked completely open. Just love, Just the total undefended reality of a man holding his daughter, his glasses slightly pushed by her small grabbing hand, his long dark hair immediately claimed by her fingers. Adais watched him hold Ara and felt the fear she had been managing all day arrive fully in her chest for the first time. Not fear of him. Fear for what was in that envelope. Fear of the specific shape of a thing that had been sent anonymously, addressed exclusively to him, and was currently folded inside the bedside drawer where she had heard him put it last night. She was afraid of what she didn't know. That was new. Daisy Williams was not familiar with the specific texture of fearing information. She had always moved toward truth, not away from it. She had built her entire life on the principle that a verified fact, however difficult, was always preferable to a comfortable uncertainty. Tonight, for the first time, she understood why some people chose the uncertainty. He came to bed and lay beside her, and she could feel him not sleeping again. And she lay in the dark, and she made a decision. She would give him one more day. One day, to come to her. Because he was a man who had always come to her when he was ready. Not a man who hid things indefinitely. Not a man who managed her, or withheld from her as a strategy. But a man who processed privately.